Hello,
Hello,
good
there.
afternoon.
Welcome everyone. I'm Toby from Ealing and Hounslow CVS and welcome to the Community Advisory Board meeting. I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes for a few more people and then we can start, but thank you very much for joining. All right, we'll just wait a couple more minutes. Normally we have a few more people than this, but I'll just give it 2 more minutes and then we can start. Normally we have about 25, 30 people. Haven't got quite that just yet. So fingers crossed. Let's give it 2 more minutes. Okay, I'm going to make a start. I'm sure we'll have a lot more people joining shortly. I don't know if there's IT problems or something, but there's usually a lot more people than this. But anyway, thank you and welcome to the meeting. So I'm Toby from Ealing and Hounslow CVS and I run the housing campaigning project in Ealing and Hounslow that supports the voice of BAME and other vulnerable groups. I'm hoping also we're going to be joined by MP James Murray, who is normally the chair of this meeting. Hopefully he should be joining us shortly. I think we need to crack on with the first presentation rather than doing introductions, and then perhaps more people will come in as we're chatting. Oh,
So, sorry, can I add something, Toby?
Of course.
Yeah. As you know that you mentioned your agenda, so some sort of update from Ealing Council. So I'm extremely sorry. As you know that we are working on our local plan, and London plan is already out, which is 560 pages. I'm extremely sorry. Our officer, the policy officer, unfortunately not available today for that update, but he promised me we will have a full update for your group in the next meeting. So apologies for that, but we need to come with more and effective information about social housing, about our new local plan, and we'll discuss about the new London plan as well.
Well, that's really exciting news. I didn't know that this was actually being worked on at the moment. So that's great news in itself, isn't it? So when are you hoping the local plan will be complete?
We are consultation has finished. Now we are almost on the final stage. We are working on terms of design code and that type of things. So I would be happy if two officer or one officer, I will make sure, which is the main policy strategic officer, policy maker type of thing. So he would be very happy to update. He's completely aware about this meeting and your panel.
Okay, that sounds great. And sorry, which planning officer was it? Which was
Steve Burton.
Steve, brilliant. Well, that's exciting news that things are moving forward in that direction. So, well, that's a huge update. So thank you very much for that, because we'll look forward to finding out more from Steve. But that's real progress if there's a local plan, and also if there's actually a quota of social housing within it. That's fantastic news.
Sure.
So thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt that, but you carry on, please.
Yeah, no, that's great news. Thank you for interrupting. That's brilliant news. Very good, positive start. Right, we've got lots more people. Nice and reassuring. I was like, oh, where is everyone? We've got a lot more people here, so I'm going to start the meeting properly now. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. This is the Ealing and Hounslow Housing Campaigning Project. I'm Toby from Ealing and Hounslow CVS, and this project is funded by Trust for London. In addition to training, the aims of the project is to really give groups, housing groups in Ealing and Hounslow, including tenants and residents associations and other charities that support residents, give them the tools and the knowledge so that they are able to share that with other residents, or show them how to access information, to understand housing policy better, and to campaign to make sure the voice of BAME groups and other vulnerable groups is heard when it comes to housing issues. So that is the main focus of this project. And in addition, we hold these quarterly community advisory board meetings. And the aim of that really is to focus on particular topic areas, things that we really want to try and make sure that they are brought to the top of the agenda. And also we have our board, some are here today, and these people are kindly joining really to help with signposting and questions from anyone who comes to this meeting, whether be they residents or groups. So we've got Kelvin Tame from Cape here today, and we've also got Shelley Chahal. Thank you very much for you two for attending. I expect we'll have some more board members joining soon. But we're going to start off with a presentation from David Seiss. Now, this really is more for groups to know about their own housing needs, so slightly different than our main objective, but I thought it's really interesting, and particularly now, I have to admit, I've got a vested interest in hearing what David has to say. He's going to give us an overview about his organisation. The reason I've got vested interest is because Ealing and Hounslow CVS have just taken over West Ealing Library as a community managed library. So I'm sure there'll be a good correlation with the information David's going to tell us about his organisation. But I am going to come back to that, some other ideas at the end of this meeting to do with West Ealing Community Managed Library and offering signposting perhaps with regards to housing. But I will come back to that later. So over to you, David. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Toby. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm just going to do a brief run through of what the Ethical Property Foundation does. And we deal in property exactly what we say on the tin. We hopefully do deal with it ethically. And we are a foundation. We are a charity in our own right. So there's a lot of sympathy with you. Just to say we've been set up since 2004 because there was a dearth of information about property issues, and charities were increasingly finding themselves in difficulties and losing money and time on property issues. So we were set up to give free advice, in essence, to charities to help them through their property issues. So our overall aim is to ensure you get better information, better guidance, so that property ceases to be a distraction for you, ceases to be a drain on your resources. Because after all, many of you will be occupying some sort of commercial property, and therefore you have to manage it. We get our money, in essence, from the City Bridge Trust, the Garfield Weston Foundation, and also some from the Tudor Trust. So we are sponsored by these groups to provide this information. while we are based in London, we have an office in Cowcroft Street. I am at the moment speaking to you from rural Norfolk, where I am in my cottage. Hence, if you hear any noises downstairs, it's my grandchildren making too much of a noise. But about 50% of our work is to do with London boroughs. We work very closely with them, so including Hounslow and Ealing, or Ealing and Hounslow, should I say, whichever way round you wish it. We've got a lot of knowledge about what happens in London. We're a very small charity. We have 3 employees, a chief executive, a senior property man, and an administrator. And the rest of the work, if you like, the rest of the guidance, support, knowledge, information, expertise is provided by a number of associates, of which I'm one. I'm largely a volunteer, being a retired chartered surveyor, but I'm happy, having worked for a local authority and for a charity in my professional career, to give some sort of help back. And we have a number of associates who we cover a large range of property issues. Now, most of those issues tend to be commercial. That is to say, tends to deal with offices where you're based. Sometimes warehouses, sometimes shops, and sometimes repositories. We don't deal a lot with housing, albeit housing is property. We occasionally get housing inquiries, but I would imagine most of your charity work, what I'm hearing, Toby, is to do with housing issues, albeit the charities themselves running this and wanting to do their best, you will be occupying property of some description. So let's make sure that property is put in a box, out of the way, you don't have to worry about it, and you can concentrate on what you want to concentrate on. I think it's fair to say that we are the only charitable body, or my CEO says so, that deals exclusively with the third sector in terms of property advice, property help, property guidance. And if you go onto the Charity Commission webpage, you should see us there, so that when charities do go to the webpage, have got property problems, don't know where to go, what to do, don't know what to do with the letter they've got, if you go onto the Charity Commission webpage, you should see us there, and it directs you to us, and hopefully we can help you along the way. So that's a brief introduction to the Ethical Property Foundation. What do we do? What do we offer charities? Well, there are 4 things we offer for charities. 3 of them are free. Now that should immediately please you. They're free, because we like free things, providing the quality of what you receive is good. Firstly, we have a free advice service. So if you go onto our webpage and go onto the inquiry, you can write to us with a property issue. It doesn't matter what the property issue, how simple, how complex it is, what you don't know, you don't understand, you're really a bit worried about it, or you've got threatening letters from your landlord, or your tenant's not paying the rent, or something's happening, then you can write to us and we'll give you some initial guidance, support on the way. It's not legal advice, it's not advice upon which you can legally rely, but we'll signpost you to take up a word that Toby said earlier and tell you whether the problem is serious, not serious, how you can get help, give you more information about it, where you should be concerned about it. So that's available to any charity, just to write to us. It's in confidence, of course, and we'll come back to you. It'll normally come to me because I'm the volunteer that happens to run the property advice service. So anyone here who's got a particular problem, we can't discuss it today because we haven't got time. There may be confidentiality. Do go onto our webpage and click on the inquiry ticket. I'm sorry about the word ticket, but that's the software package we use. Secondly, we have webinars, and we do regular webinars once a month, twice a month on various property issues, which you can join. And normally these are hosted by the CVS, such as Toby, for instance, that we will engage, and we've done some with many London boroughs, and we'll do some on the premises management. How do you manage your premises, especially going back after COVID? There's been an awful lot about that, and on our webpage, you'll see something about returning to work because of COVID. It's a strange world we're in at the moment, so everyone's a little bit reticent about whether you can go back in the office, ought to go back in the office. We'll do one on leases and licenses. So many of you will have leases and licenses. You're probably licensees rather than landlords, so we'll help you through how to do that, how to negotiate it, what the various meanings are, and I'll do this along with a solicitor who will come and explain all the legalese that's necessary. And we'll also do one on, we did a third one rather, on energy, on how you can save your energy bills, how you could save costs. Because increasingly energy performance certificates, as many of you will know if you rent houses, are becoming increasingly important. So we do a webinar on that to guide you through that. And finally, we'll do one on property planning. How do you manage your property? Why have you got property? Should you have a property strategy? So it's asking the basic questions of what property can do for you. Just don't assume you have to occupy an office. There may be some occasion, if you're a high street shop, you have to occupy it. You have to get a deal for it because that's your front. But if you're occupying it as an office, do you actually need this? So we've got free webinars. And if you're not in the borough, you can always sign up to a webinar that's been hosted by another borough, whether it's Merton, whether it's Redbridge, whether it's Bromley, which we've done some for. No one really minds. So we do these webinars, they're about an hour. We have about 15-20 minutes talk from the experts, and then it's question and answers. And it's the question and answers which tend to be the most valuable, because people, when asking questions, and if we were having one today, what you're asking, a lot of other people need to know the answer to. Thirdly, go to our webpage, and there's a lot of online resources there, basic information about property. There's a jargon buster, which I believe Antonia Swinson, our CEO, sent over to you, which explains some of the weird terms that we use in property, both surveyors and solicitors. Sometimes it's another language. You wouldn't be expected to understand that. So on the webpage, there's various tips that you can get. And even if you read it and don't understand it, you can come back to us. You can dip in and dip out of it. And finally, we have, in terms of the free service, we have access to a number of professional surveyors and professional solicitors who will act for charities, who do act for charities, will give some time pro bono for your particular problem, and then the fees after that may be discounted. And if that's the case, if we put you two in touch, then we drop out of the picture and you deal with your consultant as you would in the normal way. So that's all part of the brief gallop through what we do for free. In addition to that, we have our own consultancy. Our CEO refers to it as an affordable consultancy, and I think she thinks it's affordable to you. Indeed, we hope it is, whereby if you've got a property issue, a property problem that you need resolving, if we need to go to it in a bit more depth and a bit more breadth, and on which you can legally rely upon what we say, then Simon Taylor, who I referred to earlier as a senior property person, he heads that, and we can go into it in a bit more detail. And we do act only for charities, so we do have a wide experience of what charities do, some of their concerns, some of their vulnerabilities, where they've got financial problems and so on. So we do offer that if you need it. So that's essentially what the EPF does. It's a strange name maybe, but we do come across some charities who have committed funds in terms of leases where they have no lease at all. They have no right to remain there. So the first question we have to ask them is, why are you spending all this money? So if there's any issue that you've got, come back to us. And so what we're trying to do is to ensure that you don't have to worry about property. It's put away to one side and you can get on with dealing with all your housing issues.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I mean, I'm definitely going to promote you in all our newsletters that we send out across Ealing and Hounslow to all our groups. I'm sure many of them will be interested to find out more, and it'd be great to set up perhaps, well, joint webinars and things like that. And particularly in Ealing, with the amount of community managed libraries, I'm sure they will be needing some guidance as well. I see that Vicky Fuchs is on this Zoom, and she's from Ealing Law Centre, running another community managed library. So I'm sure both Vicky and I will be following up with you to find out more. So it sounds like a really interesting service.
And I mean, you obviously deal with community asset transfers maybe occurring. Well, we do deal with community asset transfers, and people, some charities have looked at it and said, oh, jolly good, we're going to be given a property from, in many cases, the council, but beware, councils, along with other owners, don't give anything away free unless there's a reason for it. So you just have to go behind the scenes to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. But no, we're here to help if you want it. And if you want a webinar set up, Toby, just let us know.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. I'm sure there'll be a lot more of council properties thinking about shops that have unfortunately suffered so much recently, and I'm sure they will be kind of allocated to different groups. So it's really good to know.
I mean, it's an opportunity for your housing colleagues. Now, I don't know a great deal about you, but there'll be empty shops. Landlords don't like empty property. They've got to pay rates on it. They've got to pay utility bills. Properties deteriorate when they're empty. And you may go in there and say, well, we'll just occupy it for 6 months, 9 months, a year, because you've got a purpose for doing so, the shop front. Don't pay any rent, but all they may require you to do is, could you pay the council rates? But of course, as a charity, you'll get 80% relief from the council tax. And if you speak to your council nicely, and I'm sure you all do, they may give you the extra 20% as a discretionary relief. So be nice to your council.
Oh, that's great insight. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions for David about his charity and the service they offer? Yes, go for it, Shelley.
Thank you, Toby. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Sayce. Absolutely marvellous service, really. The tangible benefits of the work that you do, I'm sure, will really benefit so many in this sector. Could I just inquire, because this is a really complicated area in terms of community organizations or charities being on license to use premises, particularly council owned premises, or having subject leases. How far, because obviously going forward with the economic climate that the country is in post-pandemic, local authorities need to tighten their belts. So many organizations, I know of a few already, have been given notices. How far does your service stretch, please? Given, you know, obviously that it involves a lot of paperwork, a lot of letter writing to and fro, potentially litigation. How far does the service stretch, please? Thank you.
It's not at all. Very good question, Shelley. There's a lot of concern, especially if licensees and lessees, which many of you are receiving notices from your landlord to leave your property, to leave their property. What we will do is, if you come to us, we'll tell you certainly whether the notice is correct, whether the landlord can do it. We can give you an indication on that. Bear in mind, it's just an indication, it's guidance. It's not formal legal stuff that you can rely upon, but hopefully it's accurate. This is intended to be accurate. And to say, yes, the landlord is in his rights to do that. You may be able to negotiate it. You may have to find out why the landlord is doing it, especially if it's a council. Now, if you've got council landlords, they are more open. I know you may think your eyebrows may go up about that, but they're a darn sight more open than some private landlords who can refuse to give you any information. At least with council landlords, you can ask them why they're doing it. Why? And if you then say, look, we are doing good work for the well-being of the community. We are here delivering a service for you. You may not have a contract with the council to deliver a service. Some of you may have a contract to deliver a particular part of, let's say, the housing service that Ealing and Hounslow required have to deliver. But that you could actually say, we're nevertheless doing a lot of good work, so help us on the way. You're going to get a lot of leverage from what we do. We lever in money, we lever in volunteers, we lever in compassion. We're looking after these vulnerable communities, which we know you can't do. You haven't the funds. You haven't the funds to do it. So that's as far as we would go. Now, we would then tell you, I think you need legal support. I think you need professional support here. I know it's extra money, which you're reluctant to spend, but there's many occasions when if you spend, especially when you're entering a lease, entering a license, it'll save you money in the long run. You'll get better deals because some of the licenses I've seen charities sign up to haven't been advantageous to the lessee or the licensee. They've just signed what the council has given them. Now, I'm not criticising councils here. They'll give you an initial license or initial lease, and I think some charities feel, okay, I'll sign it. It must be okay. But you are negotiating at an arm's length. And as trustees, you all have trustees, some of you may indeed be trustees of your charity, you have to ensure that you get best value. And one way of doing that is so we've had professional opinion, we've had to take it. So we would say, this is the time when you need it, and we could put you in touch with someone who could do the business for you. So you'd have some sort of reassurance. You could go to someone on the high street, a local surveyor, a local solicitor, that's fine. So that's as far as we can go. And hopefully we can stop sleepless nights.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well done.
Any other questions for David?
I want to ask you, David, if they have a plan for the housing they built, the community centers, because now they have a very limited the community center, but also we're looking for the place, because the where I live now, it's very small, but we want to open different branch and Hounslow and and Ealing.
Sorry, you slightly broke up there. Did you get to Hassan's point, Toby?
I didn't know. He broke up for me as well. Sorry, Hassan, could you just say the start of your question again? We didn't quite catch it.
Oh, okay. I say again, and it's possible, or you planning for if you build the new community centers, do you have available the community centers now? Do you open for the charity?
Yeah, I'm still not quite clear what you're saying, Hassan. What I was going to suggest was, would you care to go onto a website and just drop me a line on what your concern is, what your uncertainty is, and then I'll respond to you as soon as I can. I haven't quite got a handle on what you've asked, so rather than have a to and fro about this, if you'd like to set out what your concern is, I'll happily give you a response through our webpage.
Lovely, thank you. I'll send Hassan the website details as well. So
thank you very much, Toby.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, David, today. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Not at all. I will say bye-bye and leave you to your meeting.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Not at all.
So our next presentation was going to be from Tarek, who gave a bit of update at the beginning, which was a big update, really. But first of all, I want to really thank him, and also I see Councillor Shitan Manro is on this, and I wanted to say thank you very much to them for joining. And this is showing how they are listening to our concerns in this meeting, because Tarek said at the beginning the great news that and I don't think Vicky had joined at that point, that Ealing is actually producing a local housing plan which will have a quota of social housing. I mean, that is amazing news. That's a real breakthrough. So I don't know whether it was due to both these councillors joining this had any influence. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to thank them very much for joining. And yeah, thinking about, and Tarek has said that at the next meeting, Steve, one of the planning officers, Steve Burton will be joining us and telling us more. But in the meantime, I just wanted to talk a little bit about developers and their role, thinking about Ealing and the benefit of this this project, because it's covering 2 boroughs, is sometimes you kind of get a bit more information out of one borough than another. Some developers are a bit more forthcoming, and I just wanted to look. I'm just going to share my screen for a second, because I wanted to just show you the website for the Green Southall. I'm just going to share screen. just going to go to a different page. Can everyone see this, the website for the Green Southall? Can anyone see that page?
Yes, very well.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah, this is about the regeneration of an area in Southall, and the developer is Peabody. And yeah, they did, their PR company did send me an email, and I was really keen for them to come to this meeting because, you know, I really wanted to find out a little bit more. We want the Green to become a hub for community life and local people to help us achieve that vision. And Peabody has got a really good reputation as a housing organisation. And I know this has all gone through the consultations and has approval, but I was just really keen to have a conversation with Peabody and going back to the basics of, you know, information in community languages. I mean, this website doesn't have the ability to show information in different community languages, and that has been a real focus for this campaign. Something simple, but it makes such a difference. And considering this is a development in Southall, you know, this website doesn't have any community languages. Yes, they have had some consultations, but I'd really want to, I thought this is a great opportunity to talk to Peabody, to get some more conversations. How is it going to develop? I think, you know, there's one thing having a time when there's conversations to begin with, but I think it needs to be ongoing. It's to everyone's benefit to make sure developments are supported by the local community. They have a say in, they feel it's part of their home, part of their area. It's so important, even if they sell, some of these are sold as private flats. Well, that's actually going to help them, because if you've got an area where the local people feel part of it, it's going to create a really nice feeling, a nice vibe. It helps everyone. And so that's why it's so important to have conversations, ongoing conversations with the local community and information in community languages. I mean, where is it more appropriate than in Southall? So, you know, I really like moving forward with this project to think about that and try and engage more developers. And I just wanted to give an example of another developer. I don't know whether you can see this one. They're called Eco World. Now, they are building a new development where Brentford Football Stadium was. They've moved out Brentford Football Stadium higher up to near Kew Bridge, and they are developing the whole area where the old stadium was. Now, this, I'd never heard of this developer, and they contacted me. They wanted to know what I thought about the area as a resident, as a charity in Hounslow CVS. They ran through standard questions. They gave me opportunity for a conversation with them. We promoted that they had a community consultation in the local area around in Brentford, where that stadium was. And I was just really impressed by this developer because they wanted to talk to me. I wanted a conversation. And, you know, that really impressed me. And I'm just really keen to do some levelling up. Also, St Edwards, who developed a lot of property in Hounslow. I know I've seen on their sites, they do have information in community languages. So again, they've got that in place. I wanted them to come along and talk about that. They declined, which was a shame when I only wanted them to come and talk about something very positive. I know some developers get a bit nervous, but yeah, just to have that levelling of the basics to begin with of talking to the local community and community languages. I think it's just something that I'm very passionate about because, you know, it's the basics, and I think everyone deserves an opportunity to talk to developers and have that conversation in community languages and planning information in community languages. And I know Councillor Tariq Mahmood has heard me, and I'm very grateful for him for communicating with the planning officers at Ealing Council. And I I say very grateful that he's raised it again, and I look forward to seeing that kind of embedded in future developments in Ealing. So, has anyone any general questions for Councillor Tariq Mahmood about this exciting Ealing local plan that is in the pipeline? Yes, Shelley, go for it.
Thank you, Toby. Yes, can I'm not sure. You see, obviously the agenda has somewhat changed because Councillor Mahmood, he has explained to us that he'll be returning at the next meeting with the updates, especially in relation to the issue that Rena raised about the community languages. If I may, I was so heartened when you brought up the website of Peabody, because as you mentioned, Peabody is a very reputable social housing provider. However, when I see the images, there again, the towers. And, you know, on 20th April, we have a meeting in Southall over Zoom about this infrastructure locally that just does not sustain the developments that are going up. Councillors are saying that, oh, in the consultations, nobody speaks up. The point is that, you see, if in consultations nobody speaks up, that doesn't mean that councillors don't know that in Southall we are short of family homes. And we're just seeing across the town towers going up, shoebox flats, and you know the population that will draw into Southall without the requisite further infrastructure of schools, roads, transport links, surgeries, you know, hospital places, all of that. I mean, it's just like, that's why councillors are elected, to think about these issues themselves. It's not that they should defer that, oh, because we didn't get anybody responding in the consultation, so we'll just give developers a free-for-all. That's just not, you know, that, I mean, that this is a crazy situation. I would have loved the Peabody development had I seen houses, 2-story, 3-story, would have been wonderful. But again, we've got just more blocks of flats. And the people are crying out in Southall that enough, we've got enough already. Already the ones that are up were not wanted, and now we have more. I'm sorry, but I cannot but say that that's just so disappointing. I have some other, because Councillor Mahmood has explained that the London plan, that the local plan is being revised, which indeed, Toby, I second your sentiments. Indeed, very welcome. But the local plan, in case colleagues are not aware, the local plan is in place all the time. There's always a local plan. There's always elements of social housing discussed therein. But yes, it is certainly very welcome that that is being revised and reviewed and looked at. And so I don't know when in the meeting, because it is now 20 to 5, I have some particular issues that I would like Councillor Mahmood, being the I guess the nominated planning representative from Ealing Council to our board, if I could request him kindly to take away some further concerns and issues, and when he consults with his colleagues, if he could return with some responses to that. And with your leave, Toby, whenever you are ready for me to present those, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Sorry, can I Oh,
Yeah,
Tarek, you're there. Okay.
You go on first, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Shelley, I joined this because the last time I had to miss your meeting because I had other meetings. I'm happy to answer any queries you have now. I just happen to have joined. So if you've got any concerns, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. As a chair of the planning committee, I think I can really maybe give you any information you require.
Sorry, Toby, would you like me to present?
Yes, please. Sorry, Shelley. Would you like to just kind of summarise that your concerns for Chantal?
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Munro, I was not aware that you are the chair of the planning committee, so I didn't follow. Okay, so the issues that I would like to present, please, in this meeting, and I do not expect that these should be responded to here. You know, they are detailed issues, so please do take them away and return. No problems with that. But they all relate to equity in Ealing Council's planning practice, policy and procedure. So all about fairness. Basically, you know, obviously going forward, the planning is the key to the country developing, leveling up and meeting the needs of the people. We've got an aging society. We have got, you know, the equalities legislation has not been installed within the planning system at Ealing. And so all of those issues. If I may inquire, please. Firstly, there needs to be commonality with members of the public in relation to the facilities that they are permitted in their homes and the facilities that councillors have at their homes. So could I ask, please, there are, I don't know how many councillors, I think there's 62 or 57. Could you please return to the board and explain that how many councillors have at their properties outbuildings that have full facilities such as showers or WC areas, such as kitchen facilities, such as gas connections, such as electricity connections? The reason for that question is because we, the residents, are seemingly not allowed these facilities, noting that where people had those outbuildings, the council required demolition where they had been rented out. Unlawfully, wrongly rented out, I accept that. But they didn't need to be demolished. All that was necessary was that a condition be applied where the resident or the homeowner, they you know, basically assured the council through some written declaration that they would not rent out those outbuildings. And in the pandemic, those outbuildings could have been used as self-isolation units. Noting that the council's own research from 2017 has identified that at least 25% of the housing stock in the borough is short of a minimum of one room. The point being that if people do not have spare rooms, do not have spare livable accommodation at their homes, how are they actually supposed to self-isolate? Where are they supposed to do it if they don't have the spare accommodation at homes? And those very outbuildings that many councillors have at their homes, fully equipped, were denied to the residents. That is not fair. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so I would appreciate very much for those statistics, please. Secondly, in relation to any development, this is national law. In relation to any development that is needed on disability or medical grounds, planning application fees are not payable. Those homeowners, or in fact even residents, if there is a resident at a property that needs any development based on disability grounds, according to the 2012 regulations, planning application fees are exempt. However, Ealing Council does not accept this. They routinely do not permit people to tick the box to be exempt from planning application fees. And that is a real injustice to vulnerable people. And finally, if I may inquire, please, and this is a real topical issue. We have today in the national news the issue about the green seal. Well, what can I say? Obviously, the smell test. Does everything smell good according to the relationships between government officers, elected representatives, and how they operate in vis-a-vis financial arrangements or commitments or interests, conflicts of interest in that sense. If I could give a scenario, please. When somebody is issued with an planning enforcement notice, they have 28 days in which to appeal. That appeal is made to the planning inspectorate. And the planning inspectorate is a quasi-judicial institution whereby the Secretary of State has issued powers to the planning inspectorate to decide the cases, the appeals, people's appeals on their behalf, on behalf of the Secretary of State. The planning inspectorate appoints an inspector to decide the case. Now, according to the law of probabilities, a homeowner is only ever likely to be involved with the planning inspectorate once or twice in their lifetimes. So there is next to nil chance that the homeowner or resident will ever know the planning inspector. They won't know them. However, Ealing Council, for example, they are running, say, on average 6 enforcement cases a month. And their enforcement department, which seemingly is privatized to Ivy Legal. And that planning enforcement officer is thus likely to meet inspectors all the time. So the fairness issue is that neither the homeowner should be able to have any additional approach to the planning inspector, but equally neither should the council, because it's all a fair procedure, apparently. If I could inquire, please, does the council, Ealing Council, have a policy in relation to if there was a scenario where the planning inspector clearly has connections, familiarity, prior relationship with a planning inspector, witnessed, evidenced? What is the policy from Ealing Council about that clear conflict of interest? Because the planning enforcement officer, if they know the planning inspector through the work, because they're running, e.g., 6 cases a month, so they might come across the same inspector in other cases. So, and if that appellant loses their appeal, but that planning officer that's running the case for the council there's evidence that they know the inspector beforehand, what is the policy about that conflict of interest? What happens if there's evidence that some approach has clearly been made to the inspector, which the appellant would regard as unfair because they think it's a level playing field? And so that basically it has to pass the smell test, as we're talking about that in the Green Seal case, that you know, everything should smell good, but clearly that would not smell good if, e.g., the planning enforcement officer is seen embracing the planning inspector, or there's evidence of that. So I would appreciate, kindly please, Councillor Munro, if you could think about these issues for me, and perhaps advise about what the council's policies are in all of these regards. Thank you.
Do you want me to come back?
If you could briefly, I know Rena has also got another question for you. If you could just come back quickly on that, just.
Well, it's quite a few issues.
It certainly is, isn't it?
I mean, I can take as long as you want, but in a sense, I can answer most of that stuff, but it does take a bit of explanation.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if it takes 5 minutes, that's fine. And we're so grateful to have you here. So we love to hear. And then if it takes about 5 minutes, and then
okay, I'm not sure some of the points that were made at the beginning. I'm not sure how not understand where they're coming from. I mean, equity in planning and I don't know, procedures. Ealing Council has policies like any other local planning authority, Hounslow, all the other boroughs. We have proper procedures in place, and they're based on national legislation and planning local legislation, and they're open for people to read, understand how the process works. So I don't quite understand what equity means in terms of that comment. So I can't really answer that. Secondly,
should I just clarify, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Basically, it's about fairness, Councillor Munro. You know, yeah, obviously all planning authorities have procedures and practices and policies in place. It's about specific policies to meet the needs of the local demographic. I'm talking about outbuildings. How many outbuildings have been demolished by, according to, through the enforcement procedures that Ealing Council has adopted, and how many outbuildings do councillors have at their properties? The point is,
all right, I understand. All right, okay, let me go to this outbuildings issue, which is seen as, I don't quite know why you're raising it, but I'll answer your question. Okay, any sort of development has planning regulations around it, okay? Most people understand very clearly that developing something without planning permission is not allowed. And if it's then discovered that's happened, enforcement action can take place. Now, the law of the land is such that planning authorities have to follow the law. The law of the land is such that if you actually create an illegal development, look, I understand you're shaking your head, but I'm just telling you what the law is. If you create an illegal development, such as a beds in sheds, okay, and you manage that and you run it for 4 years without the local planning authority finding out, it then becomes not possible to be enforced against. That's the law of the land. You might shake your head, but that is actually the law of the land. So let me explain to you what's happened over the years in Ealing and many other boroughs. Many people did do that, and many people have got away with it because after 4 years, it becomes not possible for the local authority to enforce against them. It becomes time barred and the local authority can't enforce. Where they can enforce, if they do find out a development is in place within 4 years, they can enforce against beds in sheds. But there is one quirk in the law of the land, which is difficult for local authorities to manage this process. That is, if you use your outbuilding without any kitchen facilities, i.e. it's a subversive, i.e. it's ancillary to the main household, and a relative, i.e. your own family member uses it to say sleep in. You can have a shower, you can have a bathroom in there, but you're not allowed to have kitchen facilities. That is perfectly legal to happen. So what has happened over the years is people have gone one step further and put in kitchen facilities and done it for 4 years. And if they can prove 4 years continuous use as rented accommodation, it then becomes invulnerable to planning enforcement. So there are a number of these, shall we say, substandard units of accommodation in many parts of the borough, which the local authority, planning authority, can't enforce against. So that is why you would see some still existing and some people having it so that when they do find it, we do issue enforcement notices. And if they're not complied with, the final conclusion is we require demolition, and we would do it if they won't do it. So that's the law of the land, and that's the reality of what the issue is. I don't understand about equity or whatever.
Could I come back, Toby, if I may? The point is, when you say the law of the land, Councillor Munro, the Local Government Act 2000, Section 2, subsection 4, states that local authorities are required to form and implement policies that meet the needs of their local demographic. If I may explain, the National Planning Policy Framework is a skeleton. It is the broad policy. Local authorities make their own policies that meet the needs of their local people. Stamford Hill, London Borough of Hackney, the Jewish and Muslim communities, they have a tendency for intergenerational living. They have a tendency for large families. And so and it's a Labour council. I'm not a member of any political party, so I'm not making any political points. It's a Labour council. They have formed specific planning policies that meet the needs of their local demographic, and where planning applications come from the Sharedi and Muslim communities, every other planning consideration is in a subordinate position, and those planning applications are approved because the local councillors understand that these communities have particular needs. So it is not about the law of the land. The local authorities have a duty to form local policies that meet the needs of local people. If I may also say, actually, it is not unlawful for an outbuilding to have a kitchen so long as that outbuilding is ancillary to the use of the homeowners and residents. And now, due to the pandemic, the country has realized that people don't have the additional livable space for self-isolation in their homes. So Birmingham City Council has been approving outbuildings with full facilities where families are choosing to live together because of care issues, i.e. caring for their elderly relatives or other relatives, multi-generational living, affordability, not being able to afford new homes, a whole host of reasons. But so long as, and what they do is they have a condition, and the homeowner who, when they they make an agreement with the council that they will not rent out that outbuilding, but it has full facilities, including kitchen facilities, because it remains ancillary to the main house, because all the supplies are going from the main house. So this is about the equity and fairness. If councillors are able, regardless, it doesn't smell good, does it? If a councillor has full facilities at their home without buildings with kitchens and bathrooms and all the rest, yet the residents are denied the very same. And even those outbuildings have been demolished by the council where the homeowners were elderly. And in those circumstances, there was a genuine defence under section 1793 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. So that's what fairness, equity, that's what it's all about. And I have to say that with the colossal loss of life that we have witnessed in this country, and where Ealing Council in 2017's own research has identified that homes don't have the requisite livable space, I'm afraid there has got to be a reset of Ealing Council's planning policy, please. Thank you.
Well, so what you're asking for now that we've come down to it is a change in policy. And that's okay, that's fair enough. We're reviewing the local development plan as we speak. There is a process in place. So you should actually put in that request that you want to have the local authority change its space standards for things like room sizes, kitchen and sizes of people to live in, because that's what you're asking for. You're asking for a revision in our planning policy. Now, our planning policy at local level has to match the London plan. And the London plan clearly sets out room sizes, etc., for any property that would be enable for people to live in. So we have, our local plan has to follow the London plan because it's below it's tiered. So there's a national plan, there's a London plan, and there's a local Ealing plan. The local Ealing plan has to be in concurrence with the London plan. So I'm sorry, it's not equity you're asking for, it's a complete change in our planning policy. So I'm sorry, that's fine, you can do that, but it's not equity. We follow our policy at the moment and you want that changed. Fair enough.
Okay, just one quick response, Shelley, and we're going to have to move to Rena.
Right, no, what the London plan sets minimum standards. There is no law whatsoever that prevents Ealing Council from being more generous.
Well, hang on, I understand, but you're asking for a change in policy. There's nothing about equity that this involves. It just means you don't think the policy that's currently set out is right and you want it changed. That's fair. Every resident is able to do that. And you can put your comments in to when we're doing the consultation on a local development plan, which sets our local policies, that you want this change. You're very welcome to do that. But it's nothing to do with equity. You just want to change in policy.
Okay, let's move to Rena now. Sorry, Shelley, because we're also, you know, I'm aware Councillor Monroe wasn't actually on the agenda, so I am grateful he is asking. Just going to get one question from Rena, and then we better keep to the agenda. So, Rena, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Councillor Monroe. It's nice to speak to you.
Hi.
I've spoken in a couple of planning
meetings.
I'm aware.
Yes, I was
and
there.
It's nice that I have more than 3 minutes this time, so I won't be speaking at a human pace.
You can take as long as you like. You can always ring me. I mean, I'm always available to speak to people, but when we have planning meetings, we have rules that we stick to, and that's how it is.
Oh no, it's not a complaint. It was more a joke.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I understand there's remits between planning meetings. So my questions are to do mostly with the planning committee. As you know, I spoke at the Southall Siddings planning committee and I was quite passionate about it. And my question is around engagement and the value engagement has within decision-making powers of councillors in meetings, because within that meeting I had helped over 400 people comment, nearly 400 people in the local area comment on that planning consultation on Ealing's website. Yeah. And that was an unprecedented number for Southall. On top of that, I'd got over nearly 600 people to sign a petition. And it felt like in the meeting, none of these things really meant much to councillors when they were mentioned, even though they were put into the evidence for councillors to look at. And I understand, having talked in planning committees, that there's a huge amount of documents that councillors have available to look at in the evidence that they have when making a decision on a planning proposal, and especially
yes.
Yeah, and they would follow mostly what the planning officer has written in his report, and in the report he would make comment to what locals have said and hark back to maybe a few of the comments made by locals. But in no way does the planning officer's report really show what locals had said in those comments. And if you but glance had been made to those comments, the majority of them were, objecting towards that proposal. And I'm happy that the proposal has gone through and whatever, but my main question is, how do councillors take into account the engagement from local people? Because for me, it's a bit confusing, having attended a couple of planning meetings.
Okay, I mean, that's a really interesting one, because I do try and sort of educate people how the planning committee works, because it's not like a normal committee. The planning committee is a quasi-judicial body, okay? They are not there to just make up their minds on the basis of what people say and what comments they receive. They have to follow national planning policy, the London plan policies, and our local policies, okay? So that's first issue is always this, that many residents don't understand. The planning committee is not, it's not democratic in a sense that you would say, if 1,000 people said no to something, we should just listen to those 1,000 people and say no. It's around issues which are raised, which we call material planning considerations. There are a number of issues where residents raise issues which have no bearing on planning. So for instance, such issues as the price of my property will fall, not a planning consideration.
I agree.
I'll lose my right to a view. You don't have a right to a view under planning law.
May I interrupt you quickly?
Yeah.
Because I actually understand that very much, because when I did that campaigning for the educating people around objecting or being pro the development, I did talk about material considerations, and I also sent documents for councillors where I looked at London plan policy and I compared it to actual dimensions and the planning proposal. I made comparisons to what is written by the planning officer, and I did take all those material considerations in place, and a lot of things in terms of London plan policy weren't followed. Like if you look at density and if you look at tall buildings, policy around that had not followed, although the planning officer in the meeting, I can admit, did say that London plan policy at the time was changing, which was true. There was new amendments and new London plan policy coming through during the time of that meeting, which I understand.
Sure, the London plan is in place.
Yeah, now it is in place, which again, so when I had made my comparisons, it was with the London plan that had already existed. And even then, the planning officer did make reference to things like density being guidelines versus straight rules that have to be followed, which is again something I understand. It's just that so I'm saying with Southall Sittings, I did take into consideration that you can't have a random complaint. It has to do with the material consideration. You have to think about what can these councillors really, like, I've read the council workbook, like I'm a bit crazy, like I've read all these things, like I understand a lot about
so let me take it one step further. So the next explanation to people, which people get very surprised at, is I've been on the planning committee for many years, and you may not be aware, we have turned down applications in Southall where there was not a single objection, not a single person had objected. And yet when the planning committee looked at that application, they came to the view that it wasn't meeting all the requirements of that application in terms of planning, and that planning application has been turned down. On the other hand, we've had ones where there's thousands of people objecting and we've said yes. So it's not the number of people that object, it's around what they're saying and what are the issues they're raising and whether they affect that application. Now, the next step that is, so it's not the number of people. So people get very upset when that's pointed out to them, that it might just take one person objecting properly and it gets turned down. It doesn't need thousands, and thousands don't make any difference if they're all raising the same issue.
Then what I'm making a point is that I feel that a lot of the objections were valid and were well thought out. Like my own was.
Okay.
I sent a document which was very clearly written.
I understand.
It's not only that. Like I feel like
I know you feel angry and you feel. Look, let me carry on.
I'm not angry at all.
Okay.
At all.
No. But let me carry on and explain. So the planning committee has to balance many different issues to come to a conclusion from. So I won't go to it, but from in terms of the affordable housing being offered, the type of development, there's so many different issues that we have to consider, and the report goes through all of those issues, and they have to come to a balance. Now, you may not be aware, recently, there was another large application that came in, and it was actually a council-led one, in the sense that council was part of the applicant and with the developer on Gurnell, where there were thousands of people saying no, but they were wanting to build on what we call metropolitan open land. And the planning committee there came to the conclusion that because they were building on what you might call greenbelt land, the special circumstances for that development had not been met. And that was overwhelmingly turned down by the planning committee. And that was a council application, really, but the planning committee is independent from the council. And we said no. In other ones, we say yes.
Interesting to hear.
What happens is members of the public forget the ones where we say no and just get upset about the ones where we say yes.
Well,
so what I would say to you as being chair and being a member of the committee for many years, I would just remind people, have a look at the history and see the committee does say no to very large applications, as well as yes. So in that case, it's a judgment of the committee, and you may not like that judgment, you may disagree with it, but it doesn't make it any less the right thing to do, because we're elected and you're not. So the system in this country is that people are elected to represent the views of the community, and they're representatives, they're not delegates. So they're not bound to do what you want them to do. They have to use their best judgment. Well, and on the planning committee, every single person there is elected, and they make their use of their best judgment to come to a conclusion. And that's how democracy works in this country. Well, you may not like what your elected representatives do, but you can always vote them out at the next election. And that's how the system works. And people should understand that. The reason why we get to decide is because we put ourselves forward to represent the people of our communities. And if we get it wrong, we get kicked out. If we get it right, we get re-elected. You as an individual member of the community have a right to a view, but it doesn't override the members' elected view as a committee. They have to reach that balance, and that's the way the system works. And I
do understand.
Really change it.
May I say something? I feel like you feel like I'm attacking you, but that's not what I'm doing at all. If I give you some context, I started an organisation within Southport around educating people around the planning process and getting involved. So for me, my whole thing is, if I'm educating people about how to make comments on a planning proposal for the first time, I did it for Southport sittings, for example. It was the first time many people on my road had even engaged in the process. It was completely foreign to them. So if I'm educating people about this process, I want to know the effect it will have, if any. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. It wasn't attacking your decision making.
It does have an effect.
It's just that this is what I want to do. I want to give people a democratic voice in planning, and the way to do that right now is to make comments on a planning proposal through Ealing's website, through looking at planning notices on lampposts. And one thing that Toby has talked about a lot is about community languages and having planning notices in community languages, so more people in Southport can engage, because a huge issue in Southport is looking at demographics. A lot of people's first language here isn't English. So I've had to explain to people in Hindi, like how to make a comment, why they should. It's their right. If they live on a road, they should know about development, they should have a say. And it's these kind of barriers I'm trying to break, but it's also important for me to understand in the wider picture how council like yourself might take into consideration the comments that I'm teaching people how to make. Does that make sense? It's not an attack on you. It's just more like.
Sorry, I'm not taking. What I'm trying to explain is how the system works. We're supposed, as elected councillors, it's our job to take our views of our community and put them into the planning process. Yes, that's why it goes to a committee of councillors and not to officers. Officers do 95% of all decisions because they're small ones, and the committee couldn't handle all the applications that come in. The only ones the committee handles are large applications which have bigger effects on the community. And that's why elected members are empowered to make that decision, because it's our job to go out and talk to our residents and come to an understanding. But it's not democratic in a sense that if enough people say no, it becomes no. Because it's a planning process, it's quasi-judicial, we have to take into account many other factors, such as Southall Slidings was public land, and 50% of the homes were going to be genuinely affordable homes. Now that's a major, major factor in planning law and in planning consideration. There's a lot, the balance has to be struck. Yes, there may be issues around, traffic and all the rest of it, but the committee has to come to a considered judgment. Some things are more important than others. So housing is very, very important. It's one of the most important factors in planning, because there's a shortage of homes in Ealing and there's many people on the waiting list. So councillors have to balance many different factors and come to a conclusion. And it's our job to do that because we're elected. And yes, residents might disagree, but that's how the democracy works in this country. If it was on the basis of just how many people object to an application, we'd say no to every single one, because usually there's many people who object to all the applications.
I understand, but do you ever read the comments, or do you just read what the officer writes in his report?
Members look at comments as well, because we get many.
Okay, that's
emails.
Really good to know then, yeah.
We get many emails, and we do go through them. I go through them as chair, and it's my job to talk to the committee and actually go through all these different things. And we have long debates. And we really try, but understand there's no other way of coming to a conclusion, because somehow or the other, we need to build enough homes for our residents. There's more than 10,000 on the waiting list. And I
completely understand.
So how do you get development and change?
It's incredibly difficult. Yeah, I understand.
It's so difficult. And you can't please them. You can't please all the people. You just can't.
It's really hard to please people, but for me, it's less about attacking anyone or the council. It's more about getting people to engage more in the process and have a voice in it. I feel like you're always hearing from the same types of people. And I feel like when we're talking about Southall in this particular, is a very, very, very poor
but
engagement.
You are aware that the same type of development is taking place in Acton, Greenford, Northolt.
But maybe those places
Are you aware of all the other developments that are taking place?
Can I just come in and say it's things like the community languages in Acton doesn't have such a high percentage of people who speak community languages. And the whole focus of this project really is the activity that Rena is doing in terms of she's encouraging people to share.
It's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. But as I've said to you, we have turned down applications in Southall because we're aware as elected councillors, we're aware that communities in Southall do not engage. It's very difficult.
It's because of language barriers, and
it's our job to take that into account. So we've turned down applications where there's been not a single.
That's fantastic to hear. And may I ask one more question, please?
Yeah.
So when I was researching for Southall Sittings, and I'm okay with whatever judgment was made, because I have talked to Steve Button as well, who's head of planning, and he was really great at explaining to me about the huge targets that you do get in the council and how housing targets have to be met, and also the amount of brownfield land in Southall was a huge factor in all of this. I do understand all these factors. As I told you, I'm very, very versed in planning. even though I have no business knowing anything about planning. I'm a bit psychotic. Yeah, so when I was researching, looking around house sittings, I looked at the committee in general and like people who sat on the committee, and I saw that there was not one councillor from Southall on the committee. And I've talked to 2 people, really high up people in Ealing Council. They've said it's more of a political judgment on who sits on the committee than one to do with the council itself. So I would ask you, would you consider maybe having a Southall councillor on the committee, considering the huge amount of planning proposals?
I think what you
because there's
misunderstand,
like 10 from Perryvale, and it makes no sense to
but
me.
what you misunderstand is the committees change over the years, and it just happens at this particular time there isn't a Southall councillor. But could I point out to you, Councillor Casey Moen has been chair of the committee in the past for many years.
But right now,
Councillor Dinson,
that makes no effect right now. It doesn't affect
not right now, but what happens
right now is really important. You have to understand. This is something you really need to understand.
But
over 50% of new development is happening in South.
Yeah,
you need a South
Can I
council
explain
on that
something
committee.
to you? I think it's really important. At the beginning of every year, the groups of councillors, different parties, they ask people to volunteer to sit on committees, and it's a volunteer issue. It's not a.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah, so I would be happy to have a Southall councillor volunteer to go on the committee, but
yeah,
unfortunately,
I will do that.
Nobody has volunteered in the last few years. So it's not that there is no space. I'd take one tomorrow if somebody volunteered, but at the it's only done once a year. It's only done once a year, every May, and people volunteer.
Well, May's coming up.
Yeah, and if you would encourage some of your local council, Southall councils,
100%. I will hold you to that. We'll have multiple.
Shelley wants to ask another question.
What happens is they volunteer, then the chief whip goes through it, and obviously they try and balance it between the different areas. Yeah. But if nobody volunteers from an area, they can't balance it, can they?
It's fantastic. It's the best news you've told me. Thank you so much, Mr. Monroe.
Shelley, have you got a quick one? Because I'm aware Kelvin is on the agenda as well, and we have gone right off the.
I'm really sorry. I missed your last meeting.
It's great to talk to you. Thank you very much. And I do hope
that was really great.
To the next one in July, Councillor Monroe.
I'll try and join. Last time I couldn't because I had a different meeting to attend to, but I would really want to try and get information out to people, because there's a lot of disinformation and a lot of, shall we say, stuff going around which is not true. And I think it's really important we try and get the reality of what the issues are. And yes, we may disagree, but at least people understand that, we're not just doing things. And the other issue that was mentioned in terms of facilities and whatever, the planning system makes sure that things like schools are built, money is paid towards health service costs, doctor surgeries, road, carbon offsetting, all that is done as part of the report. And if you read the report, you can guarantee, isn't it, that all of that stuff is in there, and people just misunderstand how the planning system works. It allows for all of those costs and asks developers to pay up towards those costs. Okay, sorry, there was one more question.
Just that piece of information you just told Rena there about Southall councillors can participate. I mean, that's so valuable. So thank you very much for that. Shelley, have you got a quick one?
Just a quick one, yes, please, Toby. Councillors know that they can volunteer for the planning committee. They're well aware. If I may just mention, Public Health England, Councillor Munro, has identified that it was inadequate accommodation, one key reason why people from the ethnic minorities suffered COVID so badly and perished. Can I please inquire, or could I make a request, that Ealing Council please reviews post-pandemic how they are going to, because central government is relaxing planning laws. They want people to be able to develop their homes according to their needs. could I please request Ealing Council to consider this issue in terms of Southall, where there's absolutely a huge majority of multi-generational living, people from ethnic minority communities, people with long-term conditions, all of whom need particular safe living environments within their homes, but planning is just not enabling them. If I could request you to kindly review that, please.
Well, that's part of the local development plan. As I've said to you, we're currently going through our local development plan to update it. The last one was in 2013. So if your communities and your organization or whatever wants to see it change, you need to put in comments to the local development plan when we come forward with consultation around what is it you're seeking to change. Because are you seeking to change space standards? Are you seeking to change the ability to build on all of it? Because there are some national laws, you can't use up more than 50% of your garden space for building. So what are you looking to change? Because it's easy enough to say review, but you need people to say, and then it would apply to all of Ealing then. It wouldn't just apply to Southall. It's quite difficult to have areas where you change this kind of major policy. It would have to be a major change in space standards, etc. So we would need your views as to what needs to change.
Indeed, sorry to interrupt. Could I just inquire where should one actually engage? How does one?
We've got the local development group meets quite regularly. We're looking at all the different issues around our local development plan, and very soon we'll be coming out for public consultation. The COVID has delayed it a bit. So we've had some meetings and many community groups have taken part. Steve Barton is the chap. If you want to give Steve Barton an email, he'll probably talk you through that, and I could talk to him as well. But I have met you after many years, Shelley.
Now, Rena has asked one final question, if she may, and it's been really useful. I know we've gone completely off the agenda today, but Kelvin, hopefully you don't mind if you chat next time. It has been really valuable today. So, Rena, we're going to finish on your last question.
Yeah, no, I'm so sorry to Kelvin, by the way, because I've seen Mr. Monroe on committee planning meetings I've been in, and I've always wanted to ask questions, but I thought when he was here, I was like, oh, let me just ask him now. Yeah,
you can always ring me. Look, my number's public and my email's public. I'm happy to have a longer conversation with you, because I believe that we should talk to our residents, and I'm always happy to attend if I can. I mean, obviously I have other meetings, but if I have the time, I will always talk to you and will ring you back and have a chat, because I think it's important. What you're doing is a good thing. So I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I really don't want to work against anyone. I want to work with the council and with whoever can help me, because this isn't about politics. It's more about giving people a voice. And I think that's like a basic human right. And I think it's long overdue in a lot of places like Southall. So basically, when we started this meeting, Eric talked about the local plan consultation being done, and then moving on to the next stages. You've just said that the local development plan has yet to have the consultation open, which is what I was told by Steve Barton, because I'm going to help him engage more people in Southall and younger people in, giving their comments into the local development plan, because you only ever hear from the same people about when you have the consultation. So I'm a bit confused on the timeline, because why would Tariq say that?
I'm not sure. Councillor Mahmood is just a member of the committee. I'm not sure what role he doesn't. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. He's just a member. He's not aware of all the issues.
Okay, because when he said that, I was like, why would Steve tell me something different? And then he just said that it's already happened.
I'm also a member of the local development.
Yeah, that's what I was told about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm on that panel.
Yeah.
I'm on the panel and so on, but Tariq isn't, so he wouldn't be aware of. He wouldn't be aware. I'm not sure why he said that. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
that's
I
really
wasn't
good to
there.
know.
I
just
wasn't
sent,
there,
I literally,
so
like, at the beginning, I sent Steve like a frantic email, like, what just happened? Like, guys, that already happened, the consultation.
No. Look, the local development plan is a very long process.
Yeah,
It takes
that's
about
what I
2
thought.
years.
It's a massive thing,
because
yeah.
If you read it up, we do it, then it has to, a government inspector comes in, examines it, because obviously the government says to us, for instance, one of the biggest issues is land supply for building homes.
Oh my
So
God, yeah.
central government is saying to Ealing, you need to build 3,000 homes a year, not us, but we need to somehow give
Facilitate
enough
it.
permissions, because the problem is just giving permission to something doesn't mean to say it gets built. So we give permissions to
Yeah, I
many
understand.
applications and they never get built.
Yeah, I know.
Thousands of permissions and they never get built. So
It's like a sale. They'll sell the property on.
yeah.
Be like, this has a permission on it.
The problem we have is the government counts buildings actually built. So we had a target earlier on the London plan of 1,297 a year. The new London plan is saying 2,200 a year. And the government one, which has come in recently, they want us to build 3,000 a year. Now, in the last 2 years, we've had our best years and we got to like about 1,800 a year, last couple of years. So we're way behind. So next year, we're probably going to be called deficient in terms of having land supply and not building enough. And what that does mean is people don't understand. If the local authority doesn't provide enough space and land and with their planning policy, just like in the countryside, many local authorities don't do it. So a developer comes along, takes a local field next to the village, puts in an application. The local authority says no, they go to appeal. The inspector says, you're not providing enough homes in your area. I'm going to give them permission. And so they build on greenfield fields.
Oh, that's
throughout.
so interesting to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to provide, and that's why the density and the London plan talks about building a density near, and the national plan talks about increasing the density in London. So the planning policy is leading us towards building close to major transport hubs. So anywhere near a transport hub is likely to get a denser development, and denser usually means mansion blocks where you need more land, or it means higher density buildings.
Yeah, it means height. Yeah.
Height. And there's no getting away from it. And that's planning policy, national and local, London plan coming to us saying you must provide 3,000 homes a year. And if you don't, we'll just give permission anyway. And we won't be able to control what's built. So, well, it's democracy. If we don't do it, somebody outside will do it, and they won't care about what you think. They won't care about what the residents want. They'll just want the numbers, and they'll build it the way they want.
To know.
So
I never
we're
knew
the best guard you have of us actually listening to you. That's why we said no to Gurnell, because they wanted to build on green space, and we said
there's
no.
Actually huge planning reform happening. That the white paper that just came out. That actually takes away the power from you. Away from.
They've just changed their minds, because what they were going to do is.
Oh really? Yeah, that was horrible.
50 units. If somebody builds up to 50 units, they don't have to give any affordable homes out of that. They've just changed their minds. At the moment, it's 10. So if you build 9 and below, you don't have to give any affordable homes. So many developers only build 9. If you go over 9, you have to give us money towards affordable homes. But the government wanted to change that to 50. Can you imagine? People could build 50 homes and not give a single one towards the community for affordable homes. So
and they were taking away.
The government is changing policy to make it easier and easier for developers. What do we do?
It was in the white paper. That white paper was horrible. I made comments on it. It was really bad.
And that's why we are having to fight central government on behalf of our residents. But it's very, very difficult. And then our residents kick us because they think we're doing it. And it really is a no-win game we're in. So
that's why I wanted to explain to you.
I get called all sorts of names all over the place.
Yeah, I know. Steve said the same thing. It was really sad because I was trying to explain to you as well that I'm not attacking you. Again, it's like,
yeah, I know.
I'm really informed on this.
But you're not, I mean, you go to Twitter and Facebook and I get called all sorts of things. Goes, I can't explain it to everyone. It's really difficult. Today I've had an opportunity, so I'd like to thank you. And if you can pass that message along, that's helpful.
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. It's been a really interesting meeting, really informative. I think we've all learned so much. So thank you all very much for joining. And I look forward to seeing you all again in July.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.